In episode 18 of I Know a Guy, I'm joined by Gastonia General Manager Brady Salisbury. The young GM discusses how to adapt and adjust. Our guest today is from Jackson, Kentucky, attended Eastern Kentucky University, currently the general manager for the Gastonia Baseball Club. I know a guy, and his name is Brady Salisbury. Brady, how's it going?
Feeling good. I'm finally, excited to be here and get to have my episode. So here we go.
Excited to have you on. You were a sports management major, director of analytics, data and video coordinator, and also a baseball coach before you came to Gastonia. When did you know you wanted to work in a baseball front office?
Yeah, I knew since I was, early middle school that I wanted to have a career in baseball. That's kind of when I first started doing statistics and working on inventing my own formulas and that kind of thing. So I knew at an early age, and then shortly after that, once I got to high school, I knew I was not going to be playing baseball, into my adulthood. So to kind of transition to the baseball operations side was something I knew was coming, and I was very lucky that I got to do that as soon as I got to college.
Explain what goes into your job on a weekly or maybe even daily basis.
Well, it really depends if we're in season or out of season. In season, I'm typically, my number one priority is maintaining the roster, but then also all the logistics that goes in with a player. So, whether that's housing, travel, meal money, all those different kinds of things. Like, I'm typically the first guy to, try to help them out and make sure they're comfortable here. From an off-season perspective, it's a lot more of preparation, obviously still building the roster, which is very important, but also, getting them here, all the logistics that goes into signing those apartment deals, hotel deals, buses, all that kind of thing. So it's very different off-season compared to in-season.
Got here in 2022. What knowledge did you have of the city of Gastonia in general?
I knew it was close to Charlotte. Actually, before I interviewed for this job, I didn't even know independent baseball existed, so I kind of went into it with a really open mind. It was actually one of the cool parts about it is when I first got here, I didn't really have many connections. So my first year, I learned everything on the fly. And it honestly gets easier and easier each year the more people you know. So, but yeah, I went into it completely unaware of anything. I knew one person in the entire state of North Carolina. So, yeah, I kind of just jumped right in.
Did you do your research of Goose, of Chuck, before becoming the assistant general manager here?
Honestly, not really. Really the only thing I did before I got here is I went through and I made all the free agent lists by hand because, again, I didn't have access to MLB and, all the tools that I do now. So I basically went through and scouted, close to 500-600 players before I got here, and that was kind of like my first, crash test of seeing what I was going to be working with here.
Did you fall in love?
Yeah.
With doing all that research?
I still remember the first time I signed a player and, that feeling of excitement. You can play video games and do franchise mode all the time, and it's fun, but doing it in real life, it was like a complete dream come true for me.
So when I had Goose on the podcast, he said he talks to you every single day, at least 4 times a day, even more than he talks to his wife, Lisa. How often do you talk to Goose a day?
Yeah, he's not exaggerating. I would say I probably talk to him more than anybody else in my life, which obviously, I think some other people in my life probably don't love, but no, it's especially in the off season, when we're talking about the roster and doing mock rosters and that kind of thing, we're always changing what we're doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been successful is because Goose and I, we really are lockstep in a lot of our decisions. And that only comes from knowing your counterpart inside and out.
Now, Brady, you're 26 years old. Goose, of course, has been around the game for a long time. How do you balance new age analytics with traditional ideology?
Literally the first conversation Goose and I ever had was about how do we find that balance, because obviously he's been in the game a lot longer than I have. I've also got a different, take on baseball than what he's, had over his tenure. So one of the things we talked about early on was we need to take his, eye test, his baseball knowledge of hands-on, playing at the major league level, to me, kind of having the modern take of the analytics and all that. And that's what we do daily just about, but especially in the off season, when we're building rosters and trying to figure out what identity we want to have as a team. Because, again, I think it is important. And hopefully baseball as a whole, kind of starts to take that route. I don't think any team's going to be successful if they're completely all modern or if they're completely old school. I think, one of Goose's favorite slogans is adapt and adjust, and that's what we live by.
What stats are most important to you, hitting side and pitching side?
Well, to not give away too many things, from a position player standpoint, we're looking at the peripherals as far as, walk percentages, strikeout percentages. Obviously, home runs play a big part of our park, but we also know somebody that might not necessarily be a home run hitter can hit more home runs in our park because of the dimensions. You look at somebody like Justin Wiley, for example. He's having a career year with us, and that's not because of us. He's a great player. But guys like him, we see their profiles. He's always hit a lot of doubles, and he's had, home run power as well. We project that to play well in our park. Obviously, it's done that. So those kind of things are what we look at from a position player standpoint. And then pitching, it really comes down to three main things. We're looking at strikeout percentages, walk percentages, and home runs allowed. Obviously, again, with our park, we're looking at guys that you either get strikeouts or you get ground balls. If you're a fly ball pitcher, you're probably not going to do very well in our park. So those are just some of the things we look at.
I'll never forget this. Jack Reinheimer, I told him that the team was signing Jake Gatewood, and he says, he's going to hit so many homers here.
Yeah.
I go on Baseball Reference, and I see, he's not that much of a home run hitter. Great hitter, but not that much of a home run hitter. All of a sudden, look up at the stats, he has 28 home runs.
Yeah.
So Jack knew, I guess what you knew, the fact that play at Caramount Health Park, you're going to get rewarded.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of a funny thing about it, too. You look at the last couple of years, like we've had some right-handed guys with power, which makes sense with a short left field porch. But traditionally, you look at like Franco and Moya and Escara, some of the big lefties we've had, and, they're able to go the other way, which is one of the reasons we really put a lot of value into them. This year, we kind of just took the straight up, hey, let's get guys with right-handed pop and let's go for it. And that's your Wileys and Gatewoods, Stowers, a lot of those guys.
Last year, you showed me on your computer you have, whether it's algorithm or some data. Do you not want to reveal too much, or you want to go into that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just keep it as, bare as possible, but that spreadsheet is actually what I came up with before I got the job. That was like my crash course of ranking players, rating players, and, figuring out. Because what Goose and I, like I said, at the beginning of each offseason, what we're trying to do is come up with our team identity. We want to come up with as many game scripts as possible for us to find wins. And so as an offense, the first year, together, we said we really just want to run. We want to be able – home runs are going to happen naturally. Let's just run through people. And that's what we did. We ended up breaking the record in stolen bases. The next year, we said, you know what, it kind of hurt us in playoffs. We weren't able to hit the long ball, so now let's transition to more power. We ended up breaking the home run, record for power. Now this year, we're like, let's try to balance it out. And again, I think it's worked for us. I mean, we've been able to maintain being a top 3 offense in the league basically most of the year. So that's kind of what our goal is each offseason.
First in homers, second in stolen bases right now.
Yeah.
So doing a good job balancing both. Like you just mentioned, you've had a ton of success since you got here in 2022 as the AGM. How are you able to help turn a team from winning 54 games to 88 games in a span of one season?
Well, a lot of it comes down to, the staff I've got around me. Obviously, Goose, like I said earlier, he's been such a huge part, not just, as a coworker, but as a mentor for me. I mean, the amount of baseball I've learned from him in the last 3 years is incredible. Then you add in guys like Chucky Ballgame, Ian McKinney, like some other people that have really influenced and taught me even more about the game, and not just about baseball, but the bus rides aspect and how to, interact with a professional baseball player. I mean, it's really been a fun group to be around. From a roster standpoint, it's hard because in independent baseball, your roster changes so much, not just during the year, but year to year. We're not signing guys to multi-year contracts, so you're almost having to basically rebuild a team each offseason. And my first year, we had to do that. I think we only kept, 5 to 7 guys out of a 26-man roster going into my first year. So, it's definitely something we put a lot of value on the players because you have guys like Reinheimer that have been here for a few years, guys like De La Rosa now that's been here a couple of years. But at the end of the day, like, you have to build the foundation of being able to plug and play any type of player for it to be successful. Because if you're banking on, Reinheimer, for example, to be here for 10 years, that's just not going to happen.
2 of those players on the roster having special seasons, Jake Gatewood, Justin Wiley. Just the numbers really pop off the page.
Yep.
A few days ago, Gatewood recorded his 100th RBI. Wiley hit his 32nd home run in the same game. And you commented on Twitter saying 2 high-quality players and even better people. How much does character come into play when evaluating players to make potential moves for them?
It's another huge, I would say, thing we put an emphasis on, when we're building the roster. Typically, in the offseason when we have time. Because, again, in the middle of a season when you have injuries or guys get picked up, not to say you'll just go out and grab anybody, but you have a lot less time to be, picky, I guess is the way to put it. In the off season, when you have time to talk to former coaches, talk to former teammates, we don't like to sign anybody unless we hear from at least one other person that they're a good dude. If we hear a guy is, a bad apple or bad in the clubhouse, I don't care how good they are. We've turned those guys down, whether they're big leaguers or whatever. It plays a big factor because at the end of the day, we're not delusional in the sense that we know guys don't really want to play independent baseball. They would rather be in the big leagues or be in Taiwan or Mexico, whatever it is. I get it. Makes complete sense. So our goal is, why would we want to have guys that make everyone else's life worse or makes it even harder to be in independent baseball? And that's why I think 3 years in a row we've had such great clubhouses, and I think you could ask any player and they'll attest to that.
Big reason for that is because there are some returners. I know you said not everybody's a returner, but especially last year and this season, a bunch of players have returned to Gastonia. How much goes into establishing a rapport with certain players who want to stay year after year?
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think about personally because, not to compare myself to any other GM in the league, but I really like to have a relationship, with the players, have that connection so that at the end of the day, like, I want them to be comfortable, but I also want them to trust me. And so that's how you keep guys like, an Eric De La Rosa or Ryan Conroy. They come back for another year. I don't think you'll find that everywhere. I think if you ask some other players, and it's not just me. It goes for the coaching staff as well. I mean, guys want to play for Goose. They want to play for Chucky. And I think it's pretty evident why. Guys are comfortable. We try to get the best out of them here. And I think we're pretty, fair and trustworthy people. That's what people like to play here for.
Many players have been picked up by Gastonia, whether it's affiliated ball, Mexico, Korea, Taiwan, wherever.
Yeah.
Is it odd that part of your job is wanting the best players to leave?
Yeah, it's hard. Obviously, the whole reason we're here is to give guys that exposure and give them that second chance. So I'm never going to sit here and root against a guy. Like, I don't want him to do too well. And at the same time, there's guys that I think deserve to be picked up that haven't. You've already mentioned a couple of their names today. It's one of those things, it's a balancing act. But for me and my job is I have to expect that if so-and-so is going to go out there and perform to the best of their abilities, there's a chance that they're going to go and get a better opportunity somewhere else. So I have to find their replacement. So that's why my whole mindset is, especially when, we're winning 70, 80% of our games, is more than likely someone's going to get picked up. I've got to be able to keep that ball rolling, as quickly as possible with the least amount of hurdles. And that's typically what I try to do, at least over the last 3 years.
All right, Brady, we have a segment just for you, Keep, Cut, Trade segment. So imagine you have a lefty pitcher on the mound, a lot of curve balls that he throws, a lot of hard hit balls to the hot corner. All right, you're going to need a third baseman.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 3 third basemen. You're going to have to keep one, cut one, and trade one.
Okay.
In the majors.
And we're talking like long-term dynasty here, not
correct.
Not just okay.
Correct. So not Atlantic League format. It would be
okay.
It would be Major League Baseball format.
I'm just thinking fantasy football redraft here.
No, dynasty.
We're thinking
dynasty
long-term. Okay.
Rafael Devers, Jose Ramirez, Manny Machado. I'm giving you 3 stars.
I would say keep Ramirez, trade Devers, and cut Machado.
Okay. Any reason?
I would say age factors into a lot of that. Although I believe Ramirez might be a little bit older than Devers, I just think his game is a little bit more complete. I think he's shown he could be a centerpiece of a team, which he's done for Cleveland, especially since Lindor left. Whereas Devers, once all the Boston guys left, they kind of fell a little bit. So I put a little bit more emphasis on that. Machado, I just think he's out of his prime at this point. Still a high-quality player, but I think he's third on that list.
Are some GMs in the league you feel more comfortable trading with them? Is that really how it works? Because I know I've heard in the majors that's sometimes how it works. So do you feel that?
You definitely have better relationships with some managers than others. For the most part, though, I really don't deal with as many general managers when it comes to actual trading. Usually it's their manager, on the field. But whether it's our league, the Frontier, the American, there's definitely some guys that I feel more comfortable calling up any time of day compared to others, for sure.
So there's a term called availability bias. It's when you rely on immediate examples that come to a given person's mind when evaluating a decision. So, for example, former big leaguer, I want that guy, automatically, doesn't really matter the stats, a recognizable name. How do you try to avoid using availability bias when determining? Because sometimes there are going to be non-former big leaguers who are going to produce a lot more than former big leaguers.
And that's something I think if you look at our roster the last 3 years, we've kind of shown we're not just going to go after the big-name guys or the big league time guys just because of their experience. Again, one of the first conversations Goose and I had I told him, especially at that time, we had a very limited budget. I was like, we can't afford to overpay guys because of their name. Like, at the end of the day, people are going to show up regardless of who's on our team. So if we're going to sign somebody just because they're in the big leagues for 10 years, but we know they're not actually going to contribute to our team, why would we give them a higher portion of our salary cap? So yeah, it's definitely something we look at. Now, obviously, we've had plenty of big leaguers as well, but those are all guys that we saw were fits for multiple reasons, or we thought they were going to bring us value. So it's definitely something we try to avoid on a year-to-year basis, no doubt.
A couple days ago, you told me that the postseason is when your job gets easy. And that really surprised me, because I'd assume the most stressful time for you would be the postseason. What has your mentality been the past two playoffs in 2022 as well as 23?
Yeah, well, I've been very fortunate that, this will be my third year with the team and also third year in the playoffs. But what I've seen is at that point, the roster is what it is. Like Goose and I, we've built the roster. We've, angled it kind of what we want the vision to be. But once playoffs start, it's a crapshoot. That's what, that's what the playoffs are. My goal is to get the team in the playoffs. At that point, the guys have to perform. The coaching staff has to manage them. It is what it is. And that's why, for me, like it is, obviously, I want to win every single game in the playoffs, but at the same time, I know it's completely out of my hands at that point. In a long regular season, 126 games, when we're halfway through the year and guys are getting hurt or guys are getting picked up, I know it's on me to make sure that we maintain that roster. Whereas in playoffs, like I said, it is what it is. It's out of my hands. I can stress about it all day, but it's not going to change anything.
Are there usually more moves you try to make or even more prep in the final weeks of the regular season than usual?
Well, what I can say based on the last couple of years is we typically we try to target some pitching late in the season, getting guys from other teams that maybe didn't make the playoffs, and I think we're going to do that same thing here in the next couple of weeks. But we're always looking to better our roster, whether that's preparing for someone to get picked up or preparing to upgrade at a certain position. So I wouldn't say it really changes, but we're always looking ahead.
We have a segment on this podcast called Cool Connections. Is there any connection you've made that's helped your young career?
Yeah. One of the kind of funny ones, I would say, early on when I was in college at Eastern Kentucky, my freshman year, there were two guys on the team for EKU baseball, Jackson and Taylor Blair. And their dad was Willie Blair, who was a former big league pitcher with multiple teams. And sure enough, going into my senior year, he was a pitching coach in the Tigers system. They ended up having a job opening down in Lakeland, and he knew me from my data and analytics time with EKU, got me in there, and I got to finish out, and that was my first taste of professional baseball. So that was a pretty cool way of just literally having those little connections, trying to be a good person, trying to be knowledgeable in your area. It paid off, and it got me an opportunity that I definitely wouldn't have got otherwise. So that was pretty cool.
You ever go golfing with him?
I might have to retire after yesterday. That was a pretty tough showing, but golf's hard. That's all I got to say.
We had a fun time. I mean, I had a fun time. A fun time. So it was we had a match. We had a match yesterday. It was Goose and I versus you and Chuck.
Yeah.
And we won. Not to brag, we won by no thanks to me.
Yeah.
It was my first time ever playing golf, and Goose totally carried.
It was basically me and you caddying for Chuck and Goose, but no, it was fun. We've talked about doing it for 3 years, and I'm glad we finally got out there.
Me too. Brady, we've been out to, whether it's a bar or a clubhouse, whatever. Last year, this year, you're usually the cards dealer whenever we play a cards game. Is that something you take pride in, the take charge attitude of, what, I'm going to be the dealer?
I guess it's just because I like to keep it going. I know other people can get distracted, and a game of whatever card game we're playing will take forever, and I like to keep the game going. And same thing with when I'm at a bar and they got touch tunes. I'm going to be playing the music because I want to make sure the vibes are still going. So I don't know if it's necessarily a take charge attitude, but I just, in that sense, I do like being in control for sure.
What's your go-to playlist? What music do you play?
Honestly, it's kind of a broad range. I mean, you ask Chucky and Goose, like it'll go from Childish Gambino to Noah Khan to Hosier. So, who knows what's going to happen. But it's a little bit all over the place, other than bluegrass. Even growing up in Bluegrass State, I never could get into that.
You like to keep everyone on their toes.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Brady, earlier on in the podcast episode, you said how, it's not like a dynasty, it's not like a video game, you're actually making a move the first time you made a trade, you really felt it. You also play fantasy football, though. Fantasy commissioner for the Players League. Many people love being fantasy managers. You have the chance to actually do it in real life. So what is it now like for you, the fact that it's actually your job in real life as well?
Yeah, it's something I actually joke around with my friends quite a bit. Growing up, I played a lot of fantasy baseball, obviously. And once I kind of got into this, especially here, it was kind of like, man, I just don't even enjoy like playing fantasy baseball anymore, because now it's like it is my job. So you kind of lose, like that rush. Like I said, signing guys in real life, I don't play franchise mode that much anymore when I'm playing, the show or anything like that, because it's like I live that every day. Now when I'm signing a guy on the show, I'm thinking about like, oh, where do I got to fly him from, or where do I, even though that stuff doesn't exist in that realm, those are the thoughts that now go into my head. Whenever no matter who it is, I want to sign, a free agent, and especially here in Gastonia. But it's just kind of funny. A lot of my friends, they do joke about it, that I kind of get to do what I've always said I wanted to do, which I'm very, appreciative of. But it's definitely changed how I view some things for sure.
So it's made fantasy lamer for you because you got to actually do it.
It has not affected my love for fantasy football. I'll
Good.
say that. I can still enjoy that. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, fantasy baseball is just not really a thing for me anymore. It's definitely, it fell off.
Gastonia is doing What If Takeover homestands. Going to be the Gastonia Yarniacs this coming weekend. That'll be the final What If Takeover homestand. But I hear you like the Gastonia Baseball Club name. Is that still your favorite?
I don't know if it's my favorite, just because I changed my mind a couple of years ago. So Washington, the Commanders, they were the football team or club or whatever it was, and I was like, it is what it is. What really sold me on the Gastonia Baseball Club when we did it was just how clean it was. Like I liked the uniforms, the name, it's professional. It's something you can feel good about. The only reason why I think we should probably transition from that to actually a permanent name is because I do think it would be easier for kids, to latch on to like that mascot or that logo that, is a little bit more fun or vibrant. And that's why I would say for me, I might be leaning a little bit more towards, the Ghost Peppers or the Zombies, just because I think those are a little bit more fun. But they're clean enough to where I think guys can represent that and, not feel bad about it.
What do the next 5 to 10 years look like for you?
I think, the personal goal is still to get, back to affiliated ball, hopefully in a front office situation. But I know it's something I've got to continue to, build my resume and show that I can win here, building rosters but also building relationships. I would like to think that no matter what player comes through our organization, whether they stay or get traded or released, whatever, I hope that they feel that they were treated with respect while they were here. And that's one of my goals.
You've accomplished just about everything here. Best regular season record in 2022, stolen base record, home run record, eliminating High Point, the team's rival in the postseason, South Division championships. There's one thing left. What's your confidence level for September 17th and beyond?
Yeah, well, again, I think it goes back to you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs. Our goal is to get there, and then whatever happens, happens. That's definitely the thing that I want to check off the list next. We've came short the last 2 years, lost Game 5 of the first round my first year, and the lost Game 5 of the championship last year. So, I think we've been building stepping stones towards the ultimate goal, but at the end of the day, am I going to be destroyed if we don't win it? I'm not, because I know how much work goes into a year to even be in that position to win a championship. But, yeah, it's definitely something that I want this year more than anything, for sure.
Well, Brady, best of luck the rest of the season. Best of luck, especially September 17th and the 2024 postseason. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.